And there we go. Let's do this. Let's make a start. Thank you for joining us today for our The Power of Keynote webinar. So let's make a nice old start here. So Keynote is a very, very popular piece of software, very popular app that many educators use across the world. However, some people think it's just another version of PowerPoint, or it's, I use other apps. I use Shobi, I use Seesaw, I use Promethean software, and Keynote can't do those things. Keynote is capable of much more than we think, and we're going to have a look at that today. Firstly, we'll go through our introductions. You've got myself, I'm Phil Sparrow, an Education Development Manager for KRCS. I used to be an ex-teacher. I used to be a teacher myself, teaching primary schools all the way through from EYFS through to year 6. And then we've got Chris Smith, who is our Apple Professional Learning Specialist. He's been in the industry of education and technology for many, many years. Used to run a regional training centre in Coventry, and he is the most qualified person you're going to see in a while that can teach us all about iPad and Keynote and how it can jazz up our teaching and learning in classrooms. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Don't be shy to ask questions or speak up. You can do that by talking in the live chat. If you are on a desktop, that is most likely on the right-hand side of this video. If you're on mobile, it will be underneath the video. Feel free, you don't need to be a subscriber to chat with us. So if you want to ask any questions, say what you like what you're seeing, or you've got some feedback, or you want to make a comment on what you're seeing, feel free to do that in the chat, and we'll be replying nearer the end with questions as well. Just a note as well, this will be finishing between 4:30 and 4:40, just depending how long we go before and after the demonstrations today. But without further ado, we've already been through the part of our agenda, luckily, being myself taking you through the agenda. So we've got our introduction, which we've already done. And next we're going to get straight into the power of Keynote on iPad, followed by a few questions and answers if you've got any. Then we'll be going into our next steps of if you like what you see and you want to develop yourself with iPad or Mac in your school, how can you do it? Who can you talk to? And then our close, where you can tootle on off home after you've done your marking. You can see that we have already got our Apple Professional Learning Specialist, Chris, in the chat today. So if you've got any questions, Chris will be in the chat to talk to us, to let us know what we need to know. If you've got any questions about anything, he'll be there to answer them. So without further ado, we're going to go over into the demonstration of how to jazz up your teaching and learning, and you could do this from tomorrow, even have a play tonight with Keynote. So we're going to let Chris take the wheel now, and he's going to take us through some amazing bits and bobs.
So we're going to look at Keynote and look at it maybe using a slightly different way to the way most people use it. So I'm going to open up Keynote, and I'm going to go to the plus sign at the top to create a new presentation. What we're actually going to make is an infographic. So I'm going to choose a theme, and these are different themes. For what I'm doing, it doesn't really matter, so I'm going to choose the basic white presentation. And when this opens up, you'll see it's got title, subtitle. I'm not going to use any of these, so I'm going to select them, tap onto them, and delete. So I've got just a plain background. If I didn't delete them, these wouldn't show up in the presentation, but it's just confusing to look at. So what we're going to do is add in a few graphics. And to do this, I go to add, I go across the menu here, and we've got some shapes. Now I'm going to use the magnifying glass, and I'm going to search for, to start off with, a mountain. And there's a few there, so I'm going to choose the first one. That will drop it in. I'm going to move that across to the side. I'm going to drag on the little blue handlers and make a bigger version of that mountain. That looks okay. And then add another mountain in, again make this bigger. Actually I might swap these over the other way around. Let's put this over here. Then I'm going to take this one and just make them so it looks like a mountain range. That looks pretty good. Now with nothing selected on the screen, so I've got nothing selected, I can go to the paintbrush tool and I can choose a colour for the background. And I'm going to choose a plain colour and probably just a light blue, because I want it to look a bit like the sky. Maybe, yeah, that looks good. Now if I select object on the screen, so I'm going to select the mountain. If I hold my finger on that and tap the second mountain, I can select two together, and I can then change the color of these. Now I'm looking at somewhere in the Arctic here, so I want white mountains so I can get the impression of being somewhere cold. I'm going to keep adding in different graphics, and it's really useful that you can search in here in the search bar to find things. So now I'm going to search for the sea, and you'll notice over here there's a sea graphic. I'm going to make this bigger by dragging out the dots. So I'm going to make this big enough to fill the width of the presentation. And I can just drag this down a bit, down to here. And obviously, if this is meant to be the sea, with it selected, I can go up to the paintbrush and I can select colour. So I'm going to go for the fill colour for this, and I want this to be a darkish blue so you can see the sea at the bottom of the screen. Next, go back to add, and we can add in quite a few more graphics. So I'm going to delete sea, and I'm going to put bear because I'm looking for a polar bear. So we'll drop that in. I'm going to put the polar bear over here, make him a bit big because it's in the foreground. I would make the polar bear white, but it will look a bit strange. If I did that, he would disappear. So I'm going to choose just a grey fill so you can see the polar bear. Right, back to adding things, just to make my graphic to start off with. So I want a picture of the sun. Let's pop that one in, and I'll put that in the middle of the screen. I'm now going to search for a thermometer. I'm going to drag this over to the left of my screen, maybe a bit bigger so you can see it. And finally, in the basic shapes that it comes with, I'm going to put an arrow in. So we'll tap and drop that in. I'm going to make it a bit longer. Using the corner one, I can make it narrower. And I want to rotate it round so it's pointing upwards. Now it's quite difficult because you use two fingers to do that. So I'm going to pinch out on the screen to make this bigger. Tap onto the arrow, then with two fingers turn it around, and you can see that's at 90 degrees. That's perfect. Now away from that, I'm going to pinch back so I can see my whole picture on the screen. And I'm going to take the arrow and make it a little bit shorter, bring it over here. Before I put it on the thermometer, I'm going to change the colour of that to red, because that's going to be showing my temperature. So let's drag that onto there. So just take it. Oh, there we go. That's onto the screen. I'm going to change the sun to a different colour. I'm going to start that off with a really sort of pale yellow. So I've made my scene. That's my graphic, and this is going to be my information graphic. And the thing that we're going to do that's different to maybe the way most people use Keynote is use this to create a movie or create a GIF. And the way I'm going to do that is by using the transitions. And to get to transitions, you go over to your preview in the left hand side. If that's not showing, you need to put slide view on using that at the top. So now I tap onto that once, a menu comes up, and I'm going to choose transition. Then at the bottom of the screen it says add your transition, and I'm going to use a thing called magic move. And you'll notice the screen fades away, comes back, it looks like really nothing has happened. So I'm going to say done at the top right, and at that point it said, would you like to duplicate your slide? I'm going to go yes, copy it. So now we have an exact copy of the same slide, which I can edit to make a movie. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my polar bear, make him a bit smaller because he's going further away into the distance. So he's going, let me undo that little move, a little bit smaller. I'm going to take the sun, go to the paintbrush tool at the top, and change the colour so it gets a little bit darker or more intensity. I might make it a little bit bigger as well. I'm going to take my thermometer and move the arrow up slightly, and finally I'm going to move the sea up a little bit so the temperature's rising, the sea level's rising slightly. I'm happy with that. So again, I go back to that second slide, tap onto it, choose a transition, add transition at the bottom, and again I'm going to go with magic move. The whole thing fades out, comes back as if nothing's happened. I say done, and I duplicate again. Now this time I do exactly the same thing. I'm going to make my polar bear smaller and place him, I might have to move him first, at the top of the mountain. I'm going to change by using the paintbrush the colour of the sun. I'm going to make that a more intense colour. Again, I'm going to make the sun a little bit bigger. I'm going to go to the thermometer, get the arrow, make that a bit taller, and bring the sea level up a little bit higher again. And finally, same process, tap onto the slide, ask it to make a transition, add the magic move, fades away. Last time we were doing this, I say done, and I duplicate that slide. And for my last slide, I'm going to put that going right at the top of the scene. I'm going to actually delete my polar bear. I'm going to make the sun bigger still and change the colour of that to a full-on red. And I'm going to move the sea up, and I'm going to take the blue dot just to make it big enough to cover the whole thing. So now I've made my, it's almost like stop frame animation, each slide changing slightly to tell a story. And to watch that, if I go back to the first slide, tap onto the arrow, and now a usual way to go through the presentation, tap on the screen and you'll see the animation start to take place. I'll do my last one, and there you go. Then it comes back to the beginning. That's great. We've made an information presentation just using graphics, but what I'm going to do is go to the three dots at the top of the screen, the menu, and I'm going to export. And I could export, as I said, as a GIF, but I'm going to look at exporting as a movie. Now if I choose export as a movie, I can choose how long I want it to be between frames from one slide to the next. I'll put it at 2 seconds because I think that will work. I've left it at the original size and a frame rate of 60 seconds. And when I export, it will give me some options. It's going to make the movie, and when it's generated, it say where would you like to save it to. Now, if I was using Seesaw or Shobi, it would go straight to it, and that movie would go straight to their file, and you'd have that as evidence of their work. What I'm going to do, just to show you something slightly different, is send it out to iMovie, and it will say, would you like to make a new movie? I'll go yes please, and it drops in my animation into iMovie, and you can see it's going to run as a film there. And the reason I want to do this is because we could go down to the audio section and you go to soundtracks that we've got built into this, and if I scroll through these, you get playful, which I don't think the theme of global warming is. If I go a bit further down, it says chill. Let's see if there's anything that would, maybe sentimental would be a good one too. So I'm going to choose Big Sky and add that to my movie. And now when this plays, hopefully if I say done, I can play it at full screen for you. Okay, so there you go. I've used Keynote to make an information graphic that tells a story. We've added it into iMovie to add some music to make it more powerful as a piece of work. I hope you like that idea. Let's move on to another idea. So we're in Keynote. I'm going to tap on the plus at the top to create a new presentation, and I'm going to choose the theme. So this time I'm going to look at how we might use Keynote to create a workbook. I'm going to choose the blank basic white presentation, and when this opens up we need to put our title in. What I'm trying to do is create this template that I can send out to the pupils that then they can fill in, rather than using a paper-based project. They could do it within Keynote itself. So my presentation, I'm going to double tap onto here, is going to be weather. It's about the weather. And the subtitle, what was the weather like this week? So it's a short week project. In the bottom here I'm going to put name, and that's where they'll put their name in for their project. So that's just the opening page. I'm going to come down to the bottom left hand corner, the plus sign, and there's a range of templates to choose from, and I think to get me started I'm going to choose this one, title, bullets and photo. So in the title I'll double tap and I'll put Monday. Subtitle, I'm going to change that slightly, and that's going to say, if I double tap onto that, the temperature is, so that's something for the pupils to complete themselves. I'm going to get rid of this slide here, so just delete that because I'm going to put something else in, and I'm going to resize by dragging dots this. Now if you notice the plus sign at the bottom, when a pupil taps onto that they can choose to take a photo or a video. So this is going to be my take a picture or a video of the weather out of the window. That's what they're going to use that for. So I need to label that, so I'm going to go to the add sign at the top, and I'm going to add a shape. I'll choose this one, and then I can drag that, bring it over to the side here, and with shapes, if you double tap into them you get a cursor, you can type a label to go with this. So we'll have today's photo. Now I don't like it left just as black here, so I'm going to tap onto that to select it, go to my paintbrush at the top and choose a color maybe, or I could even go to style. I think style might be a better way, and I'll choose one of these. I'll go with the green one. That looks nice. Also in the style we could choose to put a border around that, and there's different styles of border, and I'm going to choose the one, if I scroll this up a bit, there's one that's got a piece of sellotape sticking it on. You can't see it very well, but I'm going to change the background in a moment. Also, while I'm in style, I'm going to select my photo and I'm going to put a frame around that, and I'll just make the scale of the frame a bit bigger so it stands out well. So it looks like a Polaroid photograph. It's labelled with today's photo, and we're starting to build up a worksheet for pupils to fill in. Now, next thing I want to do, if I have nothing selected on the screen at all, I can change the background of my worksheet. And I'm going to go with a gradient, and it's quite a nice gradient, but I'm going to change the blue colour to make it a bit lighter at the top, and I'm going to change the end colour to make it maybe a little bit lighter so it's not too dark at the bottom. I like the look of that. Okay, so I can tap out of there, come back to my screen, and the next thing I'm going to do is use the split screen feature at the top here, because I want to get some information from the internet. Tap onto that, I'm choosing the middle option, I'm going to open up Safari, and I did some research on trying to find weather symbols. Now there's a range of them here. If I thought the one that I've got was a good one to use, I can hold my finger onto that and drag that across into my presentation. So I'm going to take the dot in the middle and hide Safari out of the way, resize my weather symbols. Now if you notice, there's a dead piece of area at the top and bottom of the picture. So I'm going to double tap onto the picture, and this will allow me to crop this in. Okay, and I'll say done. Now I can resize this, put that into where I want it to go. I think that looks about right there. The yellow lines help me line things up. I could go to the paintbrush, put a border around that. We could change the style of the border, we could put a shadow. We can do lots of things to make this look pretty. But that looks okay to me. So what I'm going to do is tap onto this to make sure it stays in place. If I go to the paintbrush, I've got the option in arrange to lock that in place because I don't want them to move that picture. I probably don't want them to move the label. I won't lock this because if I lock it, you won't be able to add a photograph into it. So that's my basic worksheet, and each day I'm going to ask the pupils to check the weather. They will use the add sign and go to drawing to select a pen, and they can draw around and show me what the weather was today. They also, when they've done that, they'll be able to double tap into here and tell me what the temperature was. So if it was 20 degrees, top tip for you, if you go to the numbers, then hold down on the 0, keep your finger pressed on 0, you get the option to add the degree symbol in. So they can say what the temperature is, they can say which weather symbol best suits the day, and then they can take a photo of the actual weather outside. So once you've done that, you would, prior to doing the annotations I've just shown you, you would tap onto the thumbnail at the side, duplicate, and then double tap, make that Tuesday, and work your way through to get your whole workbook for the week. So that's a really simple way of doing things. You record in the temperature. If you didn't want to type in 20 for 20 degrees, you could ask them to go to add and choose the record audio. Tap onto that and they could say the temperature today is 20 degrees. And when they go to insert at the top, that will drop in a speaker and that will play it back. The only thing that you need to be wary of is if you record into here, when you save the work, you need to export it as a movie so that you can hear the audio playing back. One last thing that I thought would be nice to do, and this might be for older pupils, is go to the add sign. I'm going to choose a blank screen, and what we're going to do is look at other things we can add in. So we've got photos and videos, we had shapes. I'm going to go to this one, which is to add in a graph. So I'm going to add in this one, stretch it out. They would just need to do a little bit of editing to make this the way we want it to look. So I tap onto it and I want to edit the data. And at the moment, we've got region 1, region 2. I don't want region 2, so I'm going to tap onto that and delete. I'm going to tap where it says region 1 and put temperature. Across the top, we'll go Monday, Tuesday, and add one more in. That's Friday, and I would leave this blank, but just to show what it would look like, we could put in whatever the temperature was for each day of that week. So let's have a sudden raising of the temperature as we get towards the weekend, because we know it always happens that way and the weather is lovely by the time we get to the weekend. So I'll say done to that. So now it's showing the weather, which I would have gathered from the previous slides after I'd done the week's survey. I can also tap onto this and choose edit series, and in the temperature there I can then put the temperature into the chart. So not only have I got the scale on the side, I've got the actual temperature written in. Now there's something about the format I'd like to change here, because I want a suffix after that number, and as I've just shown you before, if I put this onto the numbers, hold my finger onto the 0, I can put the degree in, and that should add a degree to it. So now we've got a chart, we've got a workbook, we can add the information each day of the week, recording the weather symbol, recording the temperature, taking a photo, or in fact we could do a painting or a drawing of what the weather looks like and import that in. So in here, if we made a painting and we'd saved it onto the iPad, we could split screen again. I'm going to bring Safari back up because I did look for a picture of a playground with the sun shining. Hold my finger onto that and I could drag that in and add that to my workbook. So I start to make a really exciting project about the weather, rather than maybe just being written up on a worksheet that's stuck in a book. This gives me a really good looking piece of work that I think all pupils would be proud of, and we also can add some data handling at the end of the project. When this is done, you would tap on the 3 dots at the top right, you'd go to export, and I would usually export this as a PDF, and we'll go to export again, and it would then give me the option to share it back into my Seesaw account, back into my Shobi account. I could save it to anywhere I wanted to, but they would be my first choice of places to save it, and that gives us a different way maybe of using Keynote. So we're going to use Keynote to make a handwriting worksheet this time. I'm going to choose a theme, and again I'm going to choose just a basic white theme. When this opens, I could give this a title, so I could put handwriting in there. I'm not going to change anything else on here, but you could put the pupil's name at the bottom and those sort of things. I'm going to add a new slide, and here I'm going to use the blank slide, and now I'm going to tap onto the 3 dots at the top, choose the middle option so I can open up Safari, and I've searched in Safari for a handwriting worksheet in landscape, and this is one that I found I think would suit my purposes. I'm going to hold my finger onto this and drag that into my window, and then use the grey dot in the middle just to close Safari out of the way. Now this handwriting practice sheet, I don't need the student name at the top because that will be on the first page of the presentation. So I'm going to double tap and edit this down to get rid of the pieces of the picture that I don't want. And that's done, and now I'm going to drag that out to make it full size on the screen, so I've got a nice area to work on. While it's selected, I'll go to the paintbrush and I'll go to the arrange menu, and I'm going to lock that in place so that the pupils can't move it. Okay, now I've made that, I'm going to go to the thumbnail at the side, tap onto that and duplicate it, because the first page of this will be my demonstration of what I'd like to do. Second page will be for them to have a go themselves. So this is what we can do. I've got my Apple Pencil here, so what I'm going to do is tap onto the add sign and tap onto drawing, and this brings up the set of tools at the bottom. I'm going to tap onto the blue pencil, and I'm going to put it at the thickest level and the full opacity because I want them to be able to see what I'm doing. And now, as a teacher, I can demonstrate the handwriting. So I'll do my letter A, I'll do my letter B, I'll do letter C. Now, I'm following the arrows at the top, but if I do the letter incorrectly, this isn't the way that you do it. I'll do G properly again at the end. And I'll stop there and say done at the top left. Now that I'm done, I can select the text here, and I get a menu that says animate. Now if I choose animate here, you'll see what happens. It takes me to that sort of transition window, and I want to add a build in, and the one I want to choose is line draw, and you'll see what happens. So it shows my handwriting coming in. If I tap onto this again, when I say done to that, if I go back to animate and tap onto this again, I can change the duration. So I'm going to make this maybe 12 seconds. I can preview that, and you see it comes in more slowly. Now, as a teacher, I'd expect to get the handwriting technique correct, but if a pupil does this and animates their response to me, I can see how they're forming their letters, and this would give me an opportunity to help them to improve their handwriting. So I'll say done to that. So if I play this as a presentation now, and I tap onto the screen, and I tap again, my handwriting comes in, and I could be narrating to explain how to form the letters. That all comes in, pupils can see it. When they go to the next slide, they can go back into edit mode and use this to practice their handwriting on the screen. And it's just another useful way that you can use Keynote in the classroom.
Absolutely lovely stuff. I don't know about you guys, but I definitely learnt a few things there as well. For a matter of fact, I always used Keynote and handwriting to demo my own handwriting, but that's the first time I've ever thought, you know what, I could use it to see my children's handwriting and see their letter formation live, and that's a game changer for me. That's one I'd take into the classroom tomorrow if I could. So before we move on, just if there's anything that you learned today or anything that you liked, it'd be great just to get some feedback, and if it'll impact your use of iPad. Tomorrow, and next week for that matter, do you have any next steps for you where you're thinking, this is what I want to do next, or I'm not quite sure, but this is the direction I want to go in? Chris and I will be in the chat for a few minutes longer, but we will have ways for you to contact us as well. Yep. So, going on to next steps, but if you do have any questions, answers, or comments, we will still come back to them should you type them in. But going on to next steps, there are things that we can do to support you, just like today. Today's webinar is obviously free to you. We do 3 of them roughly every quarter. Always welcome to sign up for them when we advertise them, or asking if you work with KRCS in your school, asking your account manager for links. Planning Essentials, we can work closely with your school leadership team and help you, basically, whether you are getting your first iPad or you're looking to get or you're looking to upgrade where you are currently with iPad or Mac, we can help develop that plan with you for Planning Essentials. If you are already having devices in school and you're looking more to develop the curriculum and fine-tune it, maybe using some of the things that Chris does, we can come in and talk more specifically about your curriculum and how we cater that to you and your students and your teachers. So yeah, plenty of things that KRCS can do to help you. Now, it is the best time because we have finished ahead of schedule. It took us about 33 minutes, but this stream has now ended. If you want to talk to us and you liked what we did today, you can talk to our education team at edsales@krcs.co.uk. Feel free to give us a call on 0115 985 1797 and ask to speak to our education team, and we'll gladly have a chat with you about hardware, software, training, management services. We also do have a education Twitter account, so you can follow us there, managed by myself. And we do have our high street retail stores where teaching staff can get discount on anything Apple, pretty much on Mac. So without further ado, thank you very much. I will leave those details up on the screen for you for a few minutes, and then our stream will end. But remember, this video can be found immediately after the stream ends. It will be available for you to replay and share with colleagues at the same link. Thank you very much for joining us today. And hopefully we'll see you again next week. We've got a webinar coming up next week, so watch out for that. Thank you very much.